the free press, etc. It's critical to who we are. Our founding fathers fled tyrants who imposed their religion on people, killed people if they weren't Catholics or if they weren't Protestants or whatever, and they didn't want that here. And we are a Christian nation. We're a Judeo-Christian nation. That doesn't mean that Muslims aren't welcome here and other cultures aren't. They are, of course. But to say that we aren't founded upon those principles, it's on our money, it's on our documents, it's all over our Constitution. I quoted Jefferson talking about those unalienable rights granted by God himself. That simply means rights that no man can give and no man can take away. So I hear you, I understand, and I think Dr. King would be someone who would be concerned as a pastor, as a man of faith, on the creep and how churches have really become enemies in the sense of if they're not PC, it's a problem. And so I think you raise a good point. And I think, again, that's one of those issues we as a nation need to talk about. And we need to have respect for one another, that some of us are firmly rooted in our faith. And that's critical to us and how we live. And that others may not see it that way. And that's okay, too.
The book again, E Pluribus 1. Reclaiming Our Founders' Vision for a United America. Sophia Nelson, the author, amongst her credentials, she's a journalist. I want to show you a poll that was recently taken from people. 77% saying that major news outlets report fake news. How do you respond to that, A, as a journalist and someone who, is in this world?
If I tell you something enough and I keep saying it, you're going to start believing it. President Trump has done a very effective job of saying fake news and quantifying this term, and has been supported by Fox and other outlets who share his point of view, and they reach a lot of homes. This issue of Sinclair, and I assume that's where we're going with this, Sinclair Broadcasting, and having journalists read from a script that fake news is dangerous to our democracy, well, so is authoritarian practices, like taking a free press and telling the free press that they have to read a script in order to be employed by your network, or wink and a nod, because if I say no, I'm probably going to lose my job. And if I'm a young journalist, I'm impressionable, maybe I'm not Tom Brokaw, and maybe I can't say, hey, I'm not doing that. The point is that, again, go back to your documents, America. This is not okay. Our founders said that given the choice, Thomas Jefferson talked about this a lot, that any person that made a speech condemning the free press, he said, you're looking at a tyrant. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but Jefferson felt very strongly, among Adams and Washington and the other founding fathers, Madison, of course, that free press was really at the center of who we are as a nation, because that press's job is to keep a watch on the government, to inform the people when something's awry or they need to get engaged in something. The press needs to be left unfettered.
Let me read you a little bit of the Sinclair Broadcast response to this story, saying, It's ironic that we would be attacked for messages promoting our journalistic initiative for fair and objective reporting and for specifically asking the public to hold our newsrooms accountable. Our local stations keep our audience's trust by staying focused on fact-based reporting and clearly identifying commentary.
Yeah, the problem with that is they're deciding what's fact-based. So when you attack CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whoever, and you say, oh, they give you fake news, again, to a populace who's not well informed, and people, the local news, particularly if you get out into rural America and Southern America and the Midwest, that people don't watch this stuff you and I watch in the Beltway. They watch their local anchor. So if my local anchor begins to tell me that there's fake news out there and that there's somebody I need to be afraid of, I'm going to believe it. And that's the challenge. We've never seen these type of attacks before on the free press, ever, by any president. And arguably George W. Bush, I would say, took the most heat from the press of any modern president. I mean, they did not like him. They were unkind in the stories. And you never saw him attack the press that way. You just never saw it.
From Orchard Park, New York, Democrats line. Gary, you're next up.
Yes, I have a question going back to Dr. King again on his 50th anniversary of his assassination. I understand that Dr. King was quite anti-war, was against the amounts of money plowed every year into the Pentagon. And I understand that historians and the media tend to ignore that part of Dr. King's philosophy. Would you speak to that, please?
Well, you're absolutely right. Towards the end of his life, he was very ardently against the Vietnam War, and passionately so, and it made a lot of enemies for him. People didn't like that because they could use it as an anti-American stance, which in fact it was not. He, like any citizen, has the right to protest peacefully against a war. He saw the disproportionate number of black men and brown men going to that war.